chief's eldest son, just so she could have meat to eat, while I was given to a poor intellectual who had recently moved to our village. But on the day of my sister's wedding, Tom Allen had already left the village to do business and never came back. As for me, I followed David Song, who had passed the college entrance exam, back to the city. I became his wife, admired by everyone in the village, who called me Mrs. Song. My sister, on the other hand, lived like a widow. When she was caught secretly seeing another man, the village chief drove her out. My father, who always cared about reputation, beat her severely and threw her out of the house, declaring that he no longer had such a daughter. That New Year, when I returned to my hometown, Emma stopped my car, begging me to take her home. Unexpectedly, while we were on the road, she suddenly grabbed the steering wheel, causing the car and me to plunge into a ravine. When I opened my eyes, she was rolling on the ground, crying and screaming that she wanted to switch places with me and marry in my stead. At that moment, I understood. I had come back. Only Emma didn't realize that being Mrs. Song wasn't easy. I immediately signed up to retake the college entrance exam. "Julia," my father said sternly, "I've already accepted the village chief's betrothal gifts. Now you say you won't marry. How am I supposed to show my face?" When the matchmaker came to discuss the proposal and mentioned that the groom was the village chief's eldest son, Emma Tran immediately nodded in agreement. Everyone knew the village chief's family was the wealthiest in the village. Ordinary families were lucky to eat meat once a month, while his family had eggs every day and braised pork every few days. Father thought marrying his daughter into that family would be a blessing. "I only want to marry David Song," I said. Emma, just like when we were little and fought over lemon candies, threw herself on the ground and started crying and kicking. My parents' hearts softened instantly. "Get up, sweetheart," my mother said, worried. "The ground's cold. You'll catch a chill." Then she turned to me without asking a single question, only saying to my father, "Emma's right. The village chief never said it had to be her. Either daughter would do, right? He already gave us a cow and several dozen pounds of grain. We can't risk offending him." My father's voice hardened. "Julia, listen to your parents," I answered obediently, just as I always had, but deep inside I was already making plans. There were exactly 100 days left until the summer college entrance exam. I had to use every moment to study. Last year, the national college exam had just been reinstated, and everything was rushed. None of the young intellectuals from our village passed the winter exam. This summer's test would be more formal and organized. Father had already arranged for me to meet David Song. He wanted to support the government's policy encouraging young women in the countryside to marry educated youth sent there, helping them settle down and stay. Originally, Father had planned for Emma to go, but the life of an educated youth was too hard. She refused. So I had to take her place. Emma looked at me smugly. "The village chief's family is rich. You'll live in comfort. What's there to complain about?" Afraid that waiting too long would bring trouble, Father went that very evening to the youth team to arrange the marriage. They decided the wedding would be held 3 days later, with just a few banquet tables. Mother took out the only sandalwood jewelry box in the house to use as Emma's dowry. On Emma's wedding day, I went with everyone to the youth team's quarters for the celebration. That was when I saw David Song again. Looking at him, I couldn't help but remember my past life. After marrying him, I realized how weak he truly was, slow and clumsy with farm work. To give him time to study, I not only washed and cooked for him every day, but also took on his share of the labor. In summer, I worked under the scorching sun, pulling weeds and harvesting rice. In winter, when the wind cut like knives, I still dug the frozen soil to plant vegetables. My hands were covered in blisters and cuts. My shoulders were rubbed raw by the carrying pole until 2 layers of skin peeled off and stuck to my shirt, leaving deep scars. All I could do was go to the small clinic, apply some ointment, and keep working. The food rations for the educated youths were far too little. There was only some coarse cornmeal and wild greens to eat. The bits of meat and eggs I managed to get in exchange for labor points were all saved for David. As for me, I could only drink thin corn porridge to fill my stomach. At that time, all I wanted was for him to pass the college entrance exam. No matter how much suffering I endured, I didn't mind. Just a few gentle words from him could make me forget all my exhaustion. But after we returned to the city, he said he wanted to stay in the dormitory so he could focus on studying. In a whole month, he barely visited me once or twice. He left me at his parents' house, where I had to bear their disdain and live under their constant criticism, treated like a servant. Not wanting to depend on them, I went out to find work. Only after I started earning money did their attitude toward me soften. Once, I gathered all my courage to visit David at his university, bringing along some food and small gifts. But there, I saw him walking hand in hand with another girl, laughing and chatting as they strolled across the campus. I recognized her immediately. Her photo had always been tucked inside his books. "Julia, my dear," Emma's voice from the past echoed in my mind. "I wonder if you could survive this kind of life." That day, everyone in the village had gone off drinking. My mother told me to stay home and keep Emma company. She was wearing a red cotton blouse, sitting in a shabby little room that barely fit a wooden bed and a small cabinet. The youth team's dormitory didn't have enough space, so her newlywed room was a rented house from a villager, but it was only a single old room with a leaky roof. Every time it rained, water dripped everywhere, and she had to walk more than 10 minutes just to reach the restroom. I remembered living there in my previous life. Every time it rained, water poured through the roof, and we had to use bowls and basins to catch it. David didn't know how to fix the roof, nor would he let me ask anyone for help. Emma glanced around the cramped little room with obvious disgust. "My room at home is bigger than this dump," she said, but when she noticed the bookshelf by the bed, her lips curled into a smug smile. "Julia Tran, you deserve to stay in this god-forsaken place for the rest of your life. I'm going to the city soon, to eat well, dress well, and live the life you never will." I pretended not to understand. "Sister, is my brother-in-law going back to the city soon? I haven't heard of any policy allowing that." Seeing that I didn't know anything, she raised her chin proudly. "What do you know? The college entrance exam is being reinstated. Once he passes, he can return to the city, live in a big house, drive a car." "Really? That sounds amazing," I said softly, though a faint smile tugged at my lips. "So David Song might actually pass this time, huh?" When my wedding day came, the entire village buzzed with excitement. The dowry was lavish for that era. 3 valuable household items and one that made sound. It meant the dowry was rich and respectable. Back then, those 4 things were a bicycle, a wristwatch, a sewing machine, and a radio. Of course, they weren't prepared by my family. The village chief brought them as part of the groom's betrothal gifts. The wedding feast had 7 or 10 full tables, not just peanuts and fruits, but steaming hot rice and hearty soup. My parents even handed out red-dyed eggs to every household in the village. Everyone praised them endlessly, and my father's face beamed with pride. Amid the bustling wedding procession, I finally saw Tom Allen. His face was cold as stone. He was nothing like David Song. David was thin, bookish, and frail, while Tom was tall and broad-shouldered, with sun-browned skin and sharp, defined features. His whole body was muscular and tense. He looked like he could knock someone out with a single punch. I couldn't help but feel afraid of him. I had once seen him beat a wild wolf to death with his bare hands when it tried to attack him. My body went rigid as I downed the ceremonial wine in one gulp. "Come on, Tom, give her a kiss," one of the villagers shouted, laughing. "You're a lucky man. Your bride's a beauty." My face burned red, but soon the room fell silent. The rowdy young men shrank back, cowed by Tom's icy glare. No one in the village dared to cross him, and certainly no one would dare ruin his wedding night. Later, he looked at me, his dark eyes steady and serious. "I'm thinking of leaving to village to make a living," he said. "Do you want to come with me?" Tom Allen hadn't planned on marrying so soon. Ever since a scrap collector had passed through the village, he'd started thinking about going out to do business, but when he mentioned it to his parents, they were terrified. "You want to smuggle goods?" his father had shouted. "Absolutely not. You're not going anywhere." "If you step 1 foot out of the village," Tom's father had shouted, "then this family no longer has a son named Tom Allen." Our village was small and closed off, untouched by any new ideas from the outside world. To them, farming was the only honest way to live. Anyone who wanted to leave and do business elsewhere was said to be possessed by demons and would be gossiped about behind their back. Tom was an only child, spoiled and doted on since he was little. No one expected that this time he'd be locked up at home, watched closely by his parents. They even invited a matchmaker right away, hoping to tie him down with marriage so he wouldn't leave. I knew that if I refused to marry him, by the next morning he would run away on his own. "No, I'm not going," I told them firmly. "I won't go." It was a steady, deliberate refusal. Tom pressed his lips together, turned his back, and walked away without a word. "Wait," I called out. "Let me think for a moment." He hesitated, stopped for a few seconds, but still kept walking. I couldn't help myself. I reached out and grabbed the corner of his shirt. Finally, he turned to face me. "I support you leaving to do business," like I said softly. "But I want to stay here to study. I need to prepare for the college entrance exam, so I can't go with you right now. When I get into college, I'll come find you." In my previous life, even though he never returned to the village, I had met him once in South City. He had his own car and driver, and he owned several shopping centers. Even the local market vendors treated him with respect. People called him one of the leading figures in the city's economy. Tom froze for a moment, the dark depths of his eyes flickering with a faint light. Then he sat down beside me, so close that when I breathed in, I caught the clean scent of soap from his skin. "All right," he said quietly. "Then I'll go out and earn money for your tuition." His deep voice, once cold and stern, softened into something warm. The red candle in our room burned all through the night. The next morning, he still hadn't left. It wasn't until 3 days later, just when I was beginning to worry he had changed his mind, that he finally prepared to go. "I've left all the money in the jar," he said. "Focus on your studies, and remember to write to me." Tom carried only a small bag. He left behind his food coupons, meat stamps, and cash for me, and even went all the way to the school to get me a set of high school textbooks and exam papers. His strong, steel-like arms wrapped tightly around me before he left. "Go already," I said, pushing him away. "If your parents find out, they'll drag you back again. Hurry up." I shoved at him, half in panic, half pretending to complain. "Go on, you're breaking my back, big guy." After seeing Tom off, I returned to the village chief's house, crying as I told them. He left me behind and ran away. My father-in-law, Mr. Allen, was furious and stormed into the room, while my mother-in-law wiped her tears and gently comforted me. From that day on, they treated me even better. Knowing that I wanted to study, they cooked new dishes for me every day. Sesame pancakes, dumplings, steamed buns with braised pork, even sweet braised pork belly. My mother-in-law took out her own barley milk powder and mixed it into a drink for me. "This is good for your health," she said with a smile. "Just one small can cost 40 yuan. My own family could barely earn 50 yuan in an entire year. In my past life, when I'd been in the city, I never dared buy it for myself. I'd only ever use it as a gift for others. Now that everyone in the village had gone out to work, I was preparing to go to the fields to cut grass. But my father-in-law, being the village chief, took the sickle from my hand and told me to report to the tool shed instead. When I arrived, they assigned me to manage the village's farming tools. All the villagers' tools were kept in one place, taken out in the morning and returned in the evening. It was an easy, comfortable job. No need to work under the sun or in the rain, and it didn't take much effort. After a quick explanation, I picked it up right away. As soon as the warehouse keeper left, a young woman with 2 braids, Nancy Wu, leaned in close and whispered in my ear, "I heard the village chief gave the warehouse manager 2 packs of Phoenix brand cigarettes to get you this job. You're lucky. Even though your husband's not home, your in-laws treat you well. Don't go doing anything foolish, okay?" I smiled and thanked her. In a small village like ours, even the tiniest rumor couldn't be hidden, let alone something like me, being newly married and my husband already gone. After distributing the tools for the day, I took out my high school textbooks to study. In my past life, when I followed David Song back to the city, he had always looked down on me for being poorly educated. This time, I was determined to study hard, starting from middle school and working my way up again. I studied hard and finally earned my high school diploma, but in the end, it didn't matter. Love can't be forced. No matter how well I studied, in David's eyes, I was still just a country girl, someone who would never compare to the woman he kept in his heart. Now, I wasn't studying to please anyone. I studied because I wanted to pass the college entrance exam with my own effort, to live on my own 2 feet, to never depend on anyone again. Without me cleaning up after him, David wouldn't have had time to study at all. He worked all day in the fields. How could he have ever kept up with his books? Suddenly, a sharp, angry voice interrupted my thoughts. "Why don't I have a pair of gloves?" The shout startled me so much that I nearly dropped my pen. It was Emma. She stood at the doorway of the tool shed, her eyes wide when she saw me sitting there. In my previous life, she had been the one working in this position, but she'd always been resentful, lazy, half-hearted, skipping work. Within days, she was fired from the role my father-in-law had begged the village chief to give her. "Julia, give me 2 pairs of gloves. They'd better be brand new," she demanded. "They're all gone," I said calmly. "You're too late. People lined up early this morning. By 9 o'clock, everything was checked out." She scoffed. "Don't act innocent with me. If it weren't for me giving up my spot, you wouldn't be living so comfortably now." Emma glared at my new clothes, then at my crossed legs and the book in my hand. Her face twisted with fury. "I'm living worse now than before I got married. I eat corn cakes and watery porridge every single day. David may be gentle and educated, but he's useless. He can't do anything except read. I have to do all the housework and field labor by myself." I looked up at her coolly. "You were the one who insisted on marrying David's song. What's the matter, regretting it now?" "I'm not like you, lazy and greedy," she snapped. "You only married into the village chief's family because they have money. I married David because he's intelligent and hardworking. I don't regret it." I gave her a slow smile. "You sound like you're giving a speech, Miss Emma. Good for you. Stand tall and proud, not like those women who only chase after wealth." "She's right," said Mrs. Brown, the widow from next door. Her husband had died young, leaving her poor and struggling to raise her family alone. The other women in the village respected her deeply. Soon, the other women chimed in, praising Emma for being honest and hardworking, a shining example for everyone. Emma's face lit up with pride at the flattery. "You're amazing," I said with mock admiration. "Cutting grass so fast and so well without gloves? Impressive." She opened her mouth to argue, but Mrs. Brown tugged her away, muttering, "What do you need gloves for? Only delicate city girls wear them. Bare hands are faster. Come, I'll show you." When everyone had left, I shut the window, plucked out a strand of gray hair, and went back to my math problems. Later that day, word spread that Emma had cut her hands dozens of times while working and still couldn't finish her quota. Her rations were docked as punishment. The grass in the fields was thick and sharp, and Emma's hands, soft and smooth from years of easy living, couldn't compare to Mrs. Brown's calloused skin, toughened by decades of farm work. The next day, the whole village was gossiping again. The story was that Tom Allen had abandoned me because I wasn't good enough for him. When I went to work, people stared at me with pity or contempt. A few women who were friendly with Emma made a show of standing near me, talking loudly. "Some people think they're a phoenix when they're just a barnyard hen," one sneered. "Turns out no one even wanted that phoenix, ha-ha." Lisa Hill, Mrs. Brown's daughter, had once liked Tom and even sewn clothes to gift him, but when she'd offered them, he'd simply asked, "Who are you?" and walked away. She'd cried for days after that. Couldn't even keep her own husband, another woman scoffed. "So embarrassing. And look at her, dressing up like that. Who's she trying to seduce now?" That last comment came from Mrs. White, the second widow in the village, who saw every other woman as a potential threat to her man. Nancy Wu, who had been helping me in the tool shed, slammed the window shut with a loud bang. "They're such gossips," she muttered angrily. I handed her a pork and mushroom bun my mother-in-law had made. "Don't be upset. Here, eat this before you make yourself sick." "I'm fine," she said, waving her hand, but I stuffed it into her mouth anyway. She finally smiled and began chewing in small, careful bites. Lisa Hill and Mrs. White caught the delicious smell of the bun. Seeing me still calm and unbothered, they grew irritated, stomped their feet, and stormed off. I returned to my desk. There were still a few math problems I couldn't solve. so after work, I decided to head to the youth team's quarters to ask for help. The moment I stepped into the youth team's quarters, the educated youths inside exchanged glances, before all turning to look at David Song. In the past, I had always come here to find him, bringing food and a few small gifts. Everyone had assumed that I would marry David, but instead, I had married someone else. David clearly thought the same, his face twisted with disdain. "You've climbed high now, haven't you? Don't come looking for me again. I thought you were different from those shallow country women, but it turns out you're just another one chasing wealth." He must have heard from Emma that I had stolen Tom Allen from her, while she, out of admiration for David, had nobly married him instead. That was what everyone believed, and no one cared to hear my side of the story. The leader of the youth team, Mark Yee, smiled awkwardly. "Oh, Emma, are you here looking for your sister?" he asked. "She's not here right now." I shook my head. "No, Captain Ye. I came to ask you about a few math problems." In my previous life, Mark Ye had gotten into Peking University. He had been the brightest among the youth team. At first, he probably thought I was using questions as an excuse to see someone, so he explained half-heartedly. But when I pointed out the exact steps where I got stuck, his attitude changed. He realized I was studying seriously. From that moment, he was genuinely pleased. Finally, there was a girl in the village who cared about learning. He lent me his notebook and textbooks so I could copy them, and even gave me the previous year's college entrance exam to practice. "Julia, study hard," he said. "The world beyond this village is much bigger than you think." From then on, whenever I didn't understand something, I went to him for help. Each time, I brought him roasted pastries or meat buns to improve his meals. There were only 60 days left until the exam. One evening, I knocked on the youth team's door for a long time, but no one answered. After a while, someone finally came out. It was Emma, leaning lazily against the doorframe, looking at me with contempt. Well, Julia Tran, don't you have any shame? Always shoving yourself in among a bunch of men?" "They study together every night," I said evenly. "There are girls there too. I only come to ask questions. What's wrong with that?" She sneered. "Study? You? You haven't even finished high school and you're dreaming about college? Keep dreaming in broad daylight." I wasn't surprised she knew. My desire to take the exam had become difficult to hide. After all, I spent my days poring over high school materials and old tests. Even Captain Yi knew. Back then, there had been a school in the village, but the tuition was expensive. My father had only paid for Emma to attend high school, telling me there was no money left. Emma had skipped classes to go fishing or watch movies, and in the end, she never even graduated. Suddenly, before I could react, she snatched the stack of books from my hands. Her face twisted with anger as she began tearing the pages apart, as if she were destroying something sinful. I lunged forward to grab them back, but then I heard a voice. "What are you doing here?" It was David Song. He wasn't talking to me, but to Emma. "If I hadn't come," she shouted, "how would I know you've been hanging around this cheap little tramp every day?" Emma hurled the torn books at him, the shredded pages scattering across the ground. I bit my lip, my eyes stinging, and turned to Captain Ye. "She said I was shameless," I whispered. "I'm sorry for causing trouble, Captain. I won't come here again." Before anyone could say another word, I ran off. David looked down at the papers on the ground, my neat handwriting still visible through the torn edges. Then he turned toward Emma, who stood there in her floral dress, crying so hard her nose turned red. For the first time, he raised his voice and argued with her loudly. But I didn't see that part. I was already gone. By the next morning, the story had spread all over the village. No matter what they had actually argued about, everyone believed it was because of me. Rumors flew. People whispered that I had tried to seduce David, that I was shameless, that I was the reason for their fight. Even my in-laws began hinting that I should stop visiting the youth team to study. I agreed without protest. There was no point explaining. But after that incident, the girls in the youth team grew kind to me. They all knew how hard I had worked to get this far. Whenever the holidays came around, they'd invite me to study with them. Every time the girls from the youth team visited, they would bring me Captain Yi's notes and copied lessons, afraid I might feel awkward coming there myself. When there were only 30 days left before the college entrance exam, my parents suddenly sent word for me to come home for dinner. The moment I stepped through the door, I saw Emma and David already sitting inside. My father's face instantly darkened the moment he saw me. I had barely set down the 2 bags of dried peach pastries I brought before he let out a cold snort. "You unfilial girl, get down on your knees." "What did I do wrong?" I asked, standing tall by the doorway. I wasn't the obedient, fearful daughter I once was. "You've brought shame to this family," he shouted. "I can't even look people in the eye anymore. Your husband's not home, yet you keep running to the youth team. Your sister was kind enough to remind you, but you went and made her and her husband fight. Now everyone in the village laughs at me. You have a good life, good food, good clothes, and that still isn't enough? You even have the nerve to seduce your own sister's husband." As he shouted, he threw his teacup at me. The shards cut into my ankle, a sharp pain burning like fire, but all I could do was laugh, bitter and angry. "Father," I said, my voice trembling with fury, "you forced me to marry the village chief's son because you couldn't bear to give up the betrothal gifts. And now you're acting like I took advantage of something." He slammed his hand on the table. "Watch your tone. No matter what, you're living well now. You should think about your sister. You wear new clothes every day. Have you given her any? You bring food to those damned educated men, but do you ever bring anything home for your parents? Do you even care about your own family anymore?" Emma jumped in right away, pretending to sigh. "My little sister's so fancy now. She even uses face cream. I haven't even seen what it looks like yet." The moment she said that, my mother stormed toward me. She searched my things and found the small jar of face cream, along with a tin of hand lotion and my silver bracelet. She handed them all to Emma. "Thank you, Mother," Emma said sweetly, slipping the bracelet onto her wrist before stuffing the rest into her bag. I had always known my mother favored her, but I never expected it to be this blatant. I didn't want to cry, but my throat burned, and tears started falling uncontrollably. In my previous life, when I had married David, we were dirt poor. We never had enough to eat or wear. Whenever I visited home, my mother would complain that I came too often and ate too much. She'd even tell me not to bother cooking if I was so hungry. Emma used to claim she brought me steamed buns, but she would toss them on the ground as if feeding an animal, and my parents never once told her to treat me better. And yet now, after marrying David, she came home every few days for meals, even taking food back with her, shamelessly. My heart grew colder with every passing moment. All I wanted was to leave this village forever and never return. I turned to go, but Emma grabbed my wrist. "Oh, Julia," she said, shaking my hand so that the silver bracelet clinked. "This bracelet? Who gave it to you? Surely not that husband of yours, right? He's been gone for ages. Did some lover give it to you?" David's mouth twitched as if he wanted to speak, but he said nothing. I lifted my head to glare at Emma, my eyes still red from crying. "No one," I said coldly. "Don't push your luck." "Who would believe that?" she sneered. "But I get it. You must be lonely, living all by yourself." She toyed with the bracelet on her wrist, smirking. "Once my husband passes the college exam, I'll have all the jewelry I want." For some reason, Emma had complete faith in David's talent. But that only made him more determined to prove her right. My mother, hearing this, suddenly raised her hand and slapped me hard across the face. "You shameless girl," she shouted. "How dare you lie with another man?" My face burned with pain, my cheek swelling instantly. I held my hand against it, staring silently at the group before me. "From now on," my father said coldly, "this family has only one daughter, Emma. You are nothing to us." My mother looked ready to strike me again, her hand raised high, but before it could fall, a strong, warm arm pulled me back. "Don't be afraid, sweetheart. I'm home," a deep voice said. My face pressed against a broad chest, and the tears I had been holding back finally burst free. Pain I could endure, but kindness, that was what broke me. Tom Allen gently stroked my head, his hand warm and steady, patting my back as if comforting a child. "Your brother-in-law's back, huh?" my mother said awkwardly. "The girl didn't mean any harm, just scold her a bit and let it go." At that, Tom Allen released me and turned toward Emma. He extended his hand, his expression calm but cold. Facing the tall, striking man before her, Emma's face flushed red. But his next words came out sharp as ice. "That bracelet," he said flatly. "I gave it to Julia. Give it back." "Humph, who wants it anyway?" she muttered, her face burning with shame. Still, she didn't dare throw it on the floor. Tom took the bracelet from her, then carefully slipped it back onto my wrist. When he looked down at me, I could see how travel-worn and tired he was, and my lips trembled. I nearly burst into tears again. "You're beautiful even when you cry," he said softly, brushing his thumb across my cheek. "But don't cry anymore. You'll make your eyes swell." His warm fingers wiped my tears away, slow and gentle. My parents' expressions changed instantly. They both forced polite smiles. "You're back, son-in-law. Why didn't you tell us in advance? We didn't prepare anything to welcome you." Tom tilted his head slightly, his voice polite but cold. "No need. You both said Julia was no longer your daughter. Naturally, that means I'm not your son-in-law either." And with that, he took my hand and led me out of the house. My parents ran after us to the doorway. My father stomped his foot furiously, turning on my mother and Emma. "This is your fault, always running your mouths. Look what's happened now." Tom carried me inside our room and unpacked the gifts he'd brought from the city. Hair clips, dresses, sweets, milk candies, and imported cookies. His efforts to cheer me up finally made me laugh through my tears. Only when I smiled did he pull me tightly into his arms, whispering how much he had missed me. "Tom, it's the middle of the day," I protested, feeling his hand slipping around my waist, growing bolder by the second. I pushed at him weakly. "Stop it, please." But his large frame was unmovable, and he only chuckled in that low voice of his. It wasn't until late that night that we finally sat down to eat dinner. Afterward, I laid down a rule. "Next month, I'm focusing entirely on my exam prep. You're not allowed to distract me." He laughed, promising to behave. When he left again, he brought back big bags of gifts for the villagers: cloth, soap, candies, and small trinkets. Word spread quickly that he was doing well in business. Neighbors came one after another to ask how he was making money, some even begging him to take them along next time. The rumors about me being scolded and shamed at my parents' house died out almost immediately. The gossip evaporated just as fast as it had started. The villagers were so easily swayed. It only took one good deed, one glimpse of success, and they changed their tune completely. No one had imagined that my own sister, Emma, had been the one to spread those lies about me. Emma was livid, burning with jealousy. Why was it that in this life, when I married Tom Allen, he came back again and again, while in her past life, after she married him, he never returned at all? Back then, when he first mentioned going out to do business, she had turned on him instantly, sowing discord between him and her father. The village chief nearly broke Tom's leg, even confiscated his travel papers and money. But this time, after Tom left, he often wrote letters and sent back packages, letting everyone know he was safe. Seeing that he wasn't in any danger, even the village chief stopped objecting. Every day, Tom went to work the fields in my place, so I could study in peace. My in-laws stewed chicken soup to nourish me and even cooked separate meals, bringing them directly to my room so I wouldn't be disturbed. Everyone in the village knew I was preparing for the college entrance exam. Many were waiting for me to fail, while others put their faith in David's song, flattering him openly. Emma, of course, looked pleased about that, but David no longer had the calm, studious life he once did. Every day he worked in the fields until dark, then came home to suspicion and interrogation. Emma constantly accused him of still caring about me and forbade him from talking to any other woman. I knew none of this firsthand. I barely left the yard anymore, focusing entirely on my studies. One night, I asked Tom quietly, "Do you really believe I can pass the exam?" He smiled. "Whether you pass or not doesn't matter to me. If it's something you want, I'll always support you." 2 days before the exam, I had to travel to the city to stay near the testing site. Tom wanted to come with me, but something urgent came up with his business, so I told him to go handle it instead. "You can't take the test for me anyway," I told Tom, smiling as I packed my things. Right before I entered the exam hall, Emma suddenly appeared, holding out a cup of mung bean soup. "It's so hot today," she said sweetly. "Drink this before you go in. It'll keep you from getting heat stroke. But if you actually pass the exam, the ancestors will be laughing in their graves." Her voice carried that same false kindness I'd grown used to. You can do it, right? She added, smiling faintly. I glanced at her. Around us, many examinees were also holding similar cups of mung bean soup, probably bought from the breakfast stall outside the school gates. It was early June, the kind of heat that soaked your clothes in sweat even before noon. Thanks, I said calmly. I'm going in now. Non-candidates weren't allowed inside, so Emma could only stand at the gate, pretending to wait for me and David's song. When the exam ended, I walked out smiling. Emma's face froze in surprise. You're okay? She asked. Of course, I replied lightly. Everything went smoothly. I guess your mung bean soup helped. I didn't feel sick at all. Behind her, David stumbled out of the exam hall, his face pale, one hand clutching his stomach. Emma rushed to catch him. David, how did it go? At her question, his face turned even whiter. When the results came out, I went with the youth team to check the board. Tom insisted on coming with me. Julia, you did it! Captain Ye shouted. You passed. You got into South City University. Congratulations! I had officially been accepted into South City University. Tom lifted me up in his arms and spun me around, laughing. My wife's a genius, the first university student in our family. Captain Ye had made it into Peking University, and several other members of the youth team were admitted to their dream schools. Only David had failed, by a full 20 points. He collapsed under the announcement board, staring blankly, while Emma clung to his collar, screaming hysterically. How could this happen? She shrieked. You passed. You definitely passed South City University. Someone must have cheated. They stole your spot. We'll go to the officials. We'll go to the school and demand justice. The other students glanced over, most too dejected by their own scores to say anything. But Emma's shouting was so loud and wild that everyone frowned. She acted as though David's acceptance was a divine right, and anyone else's success was theft. David, embarrassed and exhausted, snapped at her. Enough! Stop it already. That only made her angrier. Don't lie to me. You failed on purpose, didn't you? You did it for her. You still can't forget that little tramp Julia, can you? She raised her hand to strike him, but before she could, Tom pulled me behind him, stepping between us and that scene of chaos. The security guards soon came and drove the two of them out of the gate. I looked up at Tom and smiled faintly. Having someone to act as a bodyguard isn't bad. Keeps trouble at a distance, right? Then I turned toward the gate, raising my voice just enough for Emma to hear. Oh, brother-in-law, I said sweetly. That day, I noticed how fast you drank that mung bean soup. So I gave you the cup Emma brought for me, mixed together with yours. Guess it still wasn't enough. I smiled gently. She didn't mean any harm, though. She just wanted you to succeed, maybe a little too badly. Emma's face went completely white. She had thought the laxative she put in the soup hadn't worked. She never realized I hadn't touched a single drop, and that her husband had drunk both cups himself. David's eyes went wide with realization. Then, without a word, he swung his hand and slapped her hard across the face. What happened between them after that, I didn't care to know. When I returned to village, red silk banners stretched from the entrance of the village all the way to our doorstep. My father-in-law threw a grand feast to celebrate, inviting the entire village. The production team held a public meeting to commend the village chief and even invited me to share my study tips. Those who had secretly hoped I'd fail fell completely silent. Soon they were sending their children and grandchildren to ask if I could tutor them. My father took my success everywhere as if it were his own, bragging nonstop, until someone called him out to his face. Everyone knows you played favorites, they said. That girl doesn't even acknowledge you as her father, and yet you're shameless enough to ride her coattails? The words hit him like a slap. He was so humiliated he didn't dare step outside for 3 days. By September, when the new school year began, Tom moved to an apartment near my university so we could be closer together. Tom opened a small general store near campus, becoming a self-made businessman. Every day, no matter how busy he was, he drove me to class and cooked meals to bring me at noon. My mother-in-law often wrote to tell us about things happening back in the village. Since Emma had returned there, she and David Song argued constantly. She kept demanding that he take her to the city. Around that time, a new policy was announced. Educated youths were now allowed to return to the cities, even if they hadn't gotten into college. though they wouldn't be guaranteed a job immediately. When I heard, I only smirked. So what if they can go back? The hardest days are still ahead of them. David still had an older brother, so when he and Emma returned home, they had to live crammed together with his parents and sister-in-law. The house was already overcrowded, and the married couple ended up sleeping on the narrow balcony, barely 3 feet wide. Emma fought at first but always lost, both in words and in blows, so she had to swallow her pride. David couldn't find a job and decided to retake the college entrance exam. Emma had no choice but to work as a laborer to pay for their living expenses. David truly was intelligent. The following year, he passed the exam and was accepted into South City University. When he came to enroll, Emma came along. The moment she saw me, she lifted her chin arrogantly. "I told you so," she said smugly. David was bound to pass. "You may have gotten into college, but you're just a girl. Even if you graduate, what difference will it make for your future?" I smiled faintly. "And what about you, Emma? Planning to keep working odd jobs forever?" "Of course not," she shot back. "David will find me a proper job soon. My suffering's finally over. I'll live well from now on." I chuckled. "Sure. Keep dreaming, big sister." When David finished registering for classes, I happened to be assigned as one of the senior students welcoming freshmen. I was about to leave when he called out, "Julia, we're studying at the same university now. If you ever need help, come to me." "David," I said coolly, "did you take the wrong medicine this morning?" He smiled even brighter. "I know you're afraid of your sister, so you act distant. But you're the reason I worked so hard. I finally made it into the same school as you." Before I could reply, Tom's low voice cut in, cold as steel. "My wife already has someone to take care of her. You can save your kindness." He grabbed my hand and led me away. David's expression stiffened, while Tom's face remained grim. Watching him, I couldn't help thinking he looked like an angry rooster guarding his hen. Tom would rather work himself to exhaustion from morning to night than live far from me. He wanted to be near the campus, to make sure I was safe. His protectiveness moved me more than I expected. Before the semester started, he couldn't sleep for several nights. When I finally said, "If it'll make you feel better, move in nearby," he relaxed at once. As I looped my arm through his, I teased him. "Jealous again?" He grinned. "Then from now on, you're not allowed to talk to him at all." "All right," I said playfully, "but only if you take me to the movies later." That was enough to make him laugh again. College was a precious opportunity, and I cherished every moment. I studied diligently, graduated smoothly, and passed my interviews to work at the Provincial Department of Education. Meanwhile, Tom's business flourished. He expanded his store, opened new ones, and eventually bought a 3-story villa, complete with a color TV and imported furniture. My coworkers often warned me, "You should keep an eye on your husband. Rich men tend to go astray." I just smiled and said, "I know." But deep down, I couldn't help feeling weary. Even after becoming a wealthy man, Tom never lost his possessiveness. He still lacked a sense of security. He even set a curfew for me. If I went out with friends, he insisted on driving me himself. He'd often ask, "Do you think I'm inferior to anyone?" When news spread that I had moved into a villa, Emma showed up again, this time bringing David and our parents. She looked around the house, eyes gleaming with jealousy. "A daughter should take care of her parents in their old age," she said sweetly. "Isn't that only right? If you don't let them live here, I'll report you to the Department of Education for being unfilial." In this society, filial piety was everything. If they made a scene at my workplace, no amount of explanation would clear my name. My father, proud as ever, couldn't bear the thought of losing face, so I calmly gave them 2 options. "Either you stay here and never return to the village," I said, "or you take 100,000 yuan and go back to build a new house. You'll have something grand to show off to the neighbors." It didn't take them a second to decide. They chose the money. After all, what could be more satisfying than showing off to everyone back home? Emma, on the other hand, was crushed. All she could do now was cling to the hope that David would someday earn enough for her to live in a villa too. David graduated, became a university lecturer, and seemed to have found stability in life. But that happiness didn't last long. Before long, I started hearing whispers. They said he had reconnected with an old childhood sweetheart named Vivian Tan, the girl for whom he had once volunteered to go to the countryside years ago. She hadn't waited long before marrying someone else, but now she was divorced, with a young daughter, and had come back to David for help. He pitied her, gave her money for living expenses, and even found her a job. Eventually, he brought her and her daughter into his home, claiming he had adopted the child as his own. When Emma found out, she completely lost control. In a fit of rage, she pushed Vivian down the stairs. David, furious, dragged Emma to the hospital to apologize. No one knew exactly what happened inside that room, but when she came out, there was a bright red handprint across her face. She ran all the way back to the village, crying and begging my father to defend her. But what use was a useless daughter compared to a university lecturer's son-in-law? My father didn't even hesitate. He kicked her out that very night. That weekend, while I was home alone, someone started knocking on my door non-stop. When I opened it, David stood there, holding a fruit basket. "What are you doing here?" I asked sharply. For safety, I didn't let him inside. "Whatever you need to say it here." "Julia," he said, forcing a smile, "I heard you've been promoted to department head at the Education Bureau. Could you maybe talk to my university for me?" So that was it. Someone had reported his inappropriate relationship, and the school had suspended him pending investigation. "I can't help you," I said curtly, moving to shut the door. He panicked, shoving his foot in the doorway. The pain made him wince, but he didn't move. "Julia, please. You have to believe me. There's nothing between me and Vivian." "I'm not your wife," I said coldly. "Whether I believe you or not doesn't matter." He clenched his fists. "You used to like me. You used to bring me food before I got married. It was Emma who ruined everything between us." "Stop deluding yourself," I snapped. "I never liked you." David's jaw tightened. "You think your husband's a good man? You really think he loves you? He bribed people at South City University years ago to keep tabs on you. Every time you talked too long with another man, he'd show up to scare them off." "I know," I said calmly. Just 4 quiet words, but they struck him harder than a slap. "I'd rather have a man who loves me obsessively," I said softly, "than one who keeps 2 hearts." David stared at me, speechless, before turning away and walking off in silence. When I closed the door, I realized Tom had been standing quietly at the end of the hallway the whole time. He smiled as if nothing had happened. "I bought pork ribs on the way home. Do you want them braised or sweet and sour?" He took my hand and led me inside as though the encounter had never occurred. That night, as I ate the sweet and sour ribs, I caught him watching me. His gaze was calm, but deep. I remembered that day long ago, when the matchmaker had first mentioned the village chief's son, and Emma had immediately agreed to marry him. "Are you trying to get away from me?" Tom asked suddenly. We spoke at the same time, both startled by the other's question. "So, you heard everything," I said softly. He nodded. "You're pretending you don't care, but I know you. You're just holding it in. The moment I let my guard down, you'll drift away." He wasn't wrong. He knew I'd already retaliated against Emma, and that I'd been willing to cut ties with my parents. I wasn't someone who endured quietly. I met his eyes. "You're not the only one who knows things. I know about the time you and your buddies jumped that senior who was pursuing me. I know you set up that sleazy director who tried to harass me so he'd lose his job." Tom blinked, caught off guard. I smiled faintly. "As long as you keep loving me, I'll never leave." His face softened, his voice low and tender. "Then I'll love you with everything I have, my beautiful wife." In the end, David wasn't fired, but his career was over. He was pushed to the sidelines, with no chance for promotion again. As for Emma, she was deceived by Vivian, who lured her all the way to Guangzhou under the pretense of a business opportunity. There, she was mistaken for a beggar and beaten so badly she was left crippled. David couldn't divorce her after that. A disabled wife meant a lifetime of obligation. Vivian didn't get what she wanted either. She married a wealthy man in Guangdong nearly 60 years old, but when he died, all his property went to his first wife's children. She ended up with nothing. And me? I lived a long, peaceful life beside Tom Allen, the man who loved me with fierce devotion. My own life blossomed beautifully, brighter than I had ever